Sound check presenter's laptop. Sound check presenter's laptop. Sound check clerk's laptop. Clerk's laptop. Sound check presenter's laptop. Sound check presenter's laptop. Sound check 2 clerk's laptop. Sound check 2 clerk's laptop. Sound check 3 clerk's laptop, or sorry, sound check 3 presentation laptop. Sound check 3 clerk's laptop.
Okay, take two. Good morning. I'm now calling the Planning Committee to order for January 12th, 2021. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and archived on the city's website. A reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. Members of the committee are reminded that the 5-minute time limit, which will be adhered to during this meeting, members can submit another request to speak if they require more time to ask questions or to make comments. Members of the public not speaking at a statutory public meeting have 5 minutes to address the committee. So I'm just going to go through roll call. Members of the committee, please use the talk hand signal if you need to speak between items and raise a hand to move or second an item. So first of all, we have Councillor Farr. Not seeing Councillor Farr. Councillor Johnson.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Collins.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Partridge. Not seeing Councillor Partridge yet. Councillor Wilson.
Good morning, Chair Danko.
Good morning. Councillor Pearson.
Good morning. Present.
And Councillor Ferguson.
Welcome to your first meeting as our new chair.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm present.
Moving on to ceremonial activities, there are none. And then approval of the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there are changes. Under delegation request 6.1 from John Sherman has been withdrawn. Under 6.2, delegations respecting application for amendments to the urban official plan and zoning bylaw for 15 Church Street, we have added written submissions from Ted Robinson, Darren Earl, Jerry Cole, Jim McLeod, Chris Cunningham, Sarah Wellman, Nancy Hurst, Rowan and Mavis Baker, Brad Davis, Bob Mayton, Sandy Price, Deborah Mills, Marion Ewan, the Ancaster Village Heritage Community, and James Webb. We have also an added virtual delegation from Jim McLeod. Under item 8, public hearings for the amendment to the official plan and zoning bylaw for 1400 Baseline Road. We have added written submissions from Stan and Renee Kurak, Sherry Hayes, Bill Millar, Sharon Williams, Valerie Gardner, Donna Head, Gwen Dale, Georgina Beatty, Trina Ennis, Deborah Martin, Thomas Bibby, and Don Simpson. Under general information, other business, we've had to add in the appointment of the first vice chair along with the appointment of the second vice chair, as a member of the committee is not permitted to hold the same position in a committee during a term of council. Under private and confidential, we have added report 14.2, update and instructions regarding LPAT appeals of 600 James Street North.
Thank you. Need a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All in favor?
Just one comment, Mr. Chair. I
Yes.
have a dental, I have a medical appointment at 3 o'clock. And so if
Okay.
we're not finished by then, I'll be going off for a while. It's a telephone appointment, so it won't be long, and I'll come right back on again.
Well, hopefully that's less painless than in person. Thank you. Councillor Johnson, are you able to vote?
Along those lines, Mr. Chair, I noted that I have an advisory committee meeting to attend at 4, so thank you.
Thank you. Everybody? Just waiting to tally the vote. So we're going to have to re-vote. Just something happened with eScribe, so apologies. If you don't mind voting again.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
Councillor Pearson, able to vote?
I voted, sorry,
Yeah, oh,
sir.
no, we got it. Okay,
Yeah, I thought so, yeah.
thank you. Yes, sigh of relief from clerks. On to declaration of interests. Are there any declarations of interest this afternoon? Seeing none, thank you. To approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, I need a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes from December 8th, 2020, moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Collins. All in favor?
Mhm.
See a thumbs up from Councillor Farr. Got that? All right. Thank you. Please on to delegation requests, item 6.2. This is delegation respecting application for amendments to Urban Hamilton Official Plan, Ancaster zoning bylaw for lands located at 15 Church Street in Ancaster. Need a mover and seconder to approve the delegation request for today's meeting. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Thank you. All in favor? Councillor Pearson, I think your mic is still live. Anyway. Carries, thank you. On to consent items. Our first item is item 7.1, the city ambassadors on the waterfront trail update. And just a reminder that members of staff who are speaking at today's meeting are asked to state their name and title before speaking for the first time. So I need a mover and a seconder to receive the report, moved by Councillor Collins, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on 7.1? Councillor Collins? Councillor, you're still muted. We're not hearing you on this end.
How's that?
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to first thank Ken Leaders for assisting with the original motion and obviously the overseeing the implementation of the city ambassador program. And through the summer months, obviously trail usage this year was higher than it's been in previous years, with people looking for things to do during the pandemic. And so it couldn't have come at a better time in terms of the ambassadors and the students who patrolled the trail through the summer months. And I received nothing but positive responses from people who live on the beach, as well as people from across the city who are regular trail users. And so the pilot program was a success, and not listed in this report. I had received a larger report at the end of the summer. The calls for the pilot program came as a result of ongoing issues over the years related to speeding bike traffic. And so these aren't regular bike users. These are people who come with their jerseys on. They're actually in teams. Sometimes they come at 6 in the morning, and they almost use pedestrians on the trail as almost as obstacles or pylons as they make their way from one end of the trail to the other. And they're formal racing teams who use the trail because of its length for practice purposes, and causes a lot of conflict and certainly presents a dangerous situation for regular trail users, if you want to call them that. And of course, the whole issue of motorized devices, whether it be scooters or e-bikes, which are not permitted on the trail. And so the culmination of those complaints over the years led to this pilot program. And from the statistics that I looked at in the larger report, it looks like our bylaw officers encountered about one instance a day of people either on an e-bike or some kind of a motorized device. And I think their presence over the summer probably discouraged a lot of people from revisiting. And so it was a success, supported strongly by the Beach Neighborhood Association and the broader community. And so I may come back in the spring. In fact, I think I know I'll come back in the spring with a similar motion that seeks to implement this again for another summer season, utilizing the beach reserve that is in place. So I wanted to thank staff for their assistance, and specifically the students who you can see from some of the pictures were well received by the residents, and I think they themselves had a positive experience interacting with the public through those months that they were employed by us. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think you're muted, are you?
There's your problem. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Collins just answered my question. I was curious as to how the students were maybe before and during determining which cyclists were out of towners. But I think Councillor Collins was referencing racing jerseys, and he's nodding his head. So I was just curious about that, how we were able to determine the difference. So thank you.
It's, Ken on the call. Who would like to answer that question?
It's Ken Leaders. I'm the Director of Licensing and Bylaw Services, and through you, Mr. Chair. As you know, our first, we were there for 2 months, month of July and August, and the first month was spent a great deal in education and awareness and really identifying the problem. We had an amazing group of students that were very flexible in their hours of the work. Some started 4 o'clock in the morning, and some started at they changed their hours to 2 o'clock in the afternoon for a start time, just so that they could make sure that they're hitting all the groups. Weekends, of course, were the ones where we found most of the problems in relation to the bike racers. But the first month was very successful in educating and creating the awareness that we're looking for. By dealing with with educating this group of individuals that are using this area as a racetrack or a training facility, we are able to really get them off the trail and move them off to the road. And so I agreed with Councillor Collins that the program was very successful, and we achieved the goals that we were looking for, and making the waterfront trail a much safer place.
Councillor?
No, thank you. I kind of got my answer earlier from Councillor Collins's comments, but I appreciate the director weighing in. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on 7.1? Not seeing any. So moved by Councillor Collins, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. All in favor or opposed? I just see that pop up. Yep. Okay. Thank you. That carries. To 7.2 is the active official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and plan of subdivision applications. I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Moved by Councillor Partridge, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Is there any discussion on 7.2? Nope. Not seeing any. Okay. All in favor or opposed? Got everybody? Thank you. That carries. 7.3, green building strategy update. Need a mover and a seconder to put this on the floor. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Farr. Is there any discussion on the green building strategy? Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question to the chief building official. Ed, are you getting much pushback from builders on these requirements, the green strategy?
See the director there. I'm sure he's just turning on
He is
his,
still muted, is he?
Edward, did you hear Councillor Ferguson? Are you able to unmute?
He must be having some problems. We can move on if you like, Mr. Chairman, if he's not
Okay.
able to join us.
Yeah, is there anybody else there who might be
Yeah.
able to?
Mr. Chair,
General
it's
Manager
Jason
Thorne.
Thorne, General Manager of Planning and ECDev. So the report you have in front of you, the action that we committed to coming out of the Climate Change Action Plan was to develop a training program for building staff. So that's what the report in front of you speaks to, as we've been developing that training program. It doesn't include new requirements on building and development. We don't have the authority to do that as a municipality. That can only be done through the building code. So we don't have the authority to create any sort of Hamilton-specific requirements for green building. In terms of the changes that the province has been making, and the federal government is also proposing some changes to the national building code that would then trickle down to the provincial building code. I do know that the industry associations are on those working groups that are reviewing those code matters, and I haven't heard any sort of strong pushback in terms of what those standards are. And sorry, I'm not sure. Ed is I think Ed actually participates on that working group, but it seems like he's having some technical problems to weigh in.
Thanks, Jason. So, well, what's the purpose of doing the training if you're not enforcing any of the green strategy yet? Is it to get prepared?
So through the chair, yes, part of it is about getting prepared. Part of it is about making sure that our staff have a complete understanding of the latest kind of green standards, because it is possible for a developer to come forward and build above the code. So for example, in Hamilton, and especially I'd say city housing is a major leader in this, we're seeing a lot of passive house come forward. So that's not a building code requirement, but we are still nonetheless seeing those kinds of applications come forward. So what Ed's been trying to do with his team is make sure that they're aware of those standards and are able to assess and review those applications as they come in when they go above and beyond what the building code requires.
Okay, because I think this would help us meet our 50% target by the year 2030 in our carbon reduction. So thanks for that update, Jason.
Director Vanderwind, is there anything you wanted to add? I see you got your connection sorted out.
Through the chair, yes, rural internet is sometimes a challenge. As you mentioned, I'm the CPO in the city of Hamilton, and Jason said it very well. Our team is bracing itself and resourcing itself to support the industry on climate change initiatives. We cannot enforce all of them, but at least we're familiar with what they're doing to help our city keep green.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion on 7.3? Not seeing any, so go to the vote. All in favor or opposed? Receiving this. Thank you. That carries. On to 4 is an appeal of the Urban Hamilton Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Bylaw to the local Planning Appeal Tribunal for lack of decision for lands located at 1630 Main Street West and 69 Sanders Boulevard in Hamilton in Ward 1. I need a mover and a seconder to put the report on the floor. Moved by, I'd like to move this, Councillor Wilson. Seconded by Councillor Farr. Is there any discussion on 7.4? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Danko. If I could ask if City Planner Deere is present or someone from planning. I know there are many people, a parcel at, along Main Street West in the Ainsleywood neighborhood. If someone from planning could just please summarize what happened and what will happen in the near future, and any hint at a schedule for when this might be heard. Thank you.
Through the chair, this is Andrea Deere, planner for the city of Hamilton.
Good morning.
Good morning. What happened was they applied for the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment in 2018, but discussions were ongoing with city staff, all in good faith. We had passed the legislative timeline for appeal, but discussions were continuing. what happened was we ended up at a position where we let the applicants know that we were not likely able to support their application. And it's my understanding that the owner decided that an appeal was necessary at this time. In terms of timelines, that might be a better question for Patrick McDonald. I'm not certain what the LPAT timelines are looking like right now.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Andrea. Before Patrick gets on then, the discussions were ongoing in good faith. Yes, they exceeded the timeline. And when you, or when the city staff indicated that you were at an impasse, there was not a willingness on the part of the applicant to continue discussions. Is that what I heard you say?
That's correct. Yes, they had been continuing discussions for some time, but when we came back that, with this particular design that they had on the table, we were not able to support, the discussions ended.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any further discussion on 7.4?
If I could, Mr. Chair, I may have interrupted Patrick, who I was asking to speak about a schedule so that I could apprise the neighborhood accordingly.
Okay. I see Patrick there.
Thank you. So through the chair, I wasn't interrupted by the councillors. That's fine. So the LPAT has acknowledged the receipt of the matter, but as of yet, there hasn't been no hearing scheduled, I believe. So we should receive notification when the first case management conference is scheduled. And I think we'll be preparing a report for instructions in the interim.
Do you have a sense of, thank you, Patrick, when that
calendar? There's the rough timeline right now is they're not scheduling anything any earlier than March. So I would say it would likely be spring before we hear a CMC. So I would say the earliest the hearing would be scheduled is probably in the later half of 2021. If then it's the LPAT's still got a bit of a scheduling backlog.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Patrick, if you could just walk me through. So what happens, just so that the community is aware, I know they're watching this morning. Can you just walk me through the timeline or steps of what happens after that case management conference and when the next time you would be reporting to this committee looking for instructions?
So through the chair, so there's following the CMC, there may be a hearing scheduled at that time. There may not be. It depends on what procedural matters are out there. So any members of the community who wish to participate in as either a party or a participant or observe the hearing can appear at that first CMC to do so. There will be notice issued by the tribunal in accordance with the regulations for that. In the meantime, what we can do and what we have to do actually is because this was a non-decision appeal, staff will be bringing forward a report for instructions. I believe we're targeting, I believe April 6th, or sorry, April 20th, I believe is what we're targeting for that. And there will also be, if necessary, a non-statutory public meeting, which we can discuss with your office about whether we hold that concurrently, because there is going to be some in-camera portion of the instructions, but there can also be a non-statutory public meeting if required because this was a non-decision.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I will follow up with you for some particulars. I appreciate your insight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any further discussion on 7.4? I do have a couple questions. I'm not sure if Director Robichaud is in the meeting today, but so this is another appeal to LPAT for non-decision, and I just wanted to highlight to anybody that might be watching that lack of decision doesn't mean that we at the City of Hamilton or planning staff weren't capable of making a decision. It's that we are continuing with negotiations in good faith, trying to come to an amiable conclusion to this, and the developer chose to pull the trigger and go straight to LPAT. So can I ask Director Robichaud, I've got one of these in my ward. This is another one. I know Councillor Ferguson has raised this before. If we're seeing an increase of developers choosing to skip planning committee and going through the standard approval process, and instead, going straight to LPAT in order to avoid that public input and public scrutiny. Director Robichaud?
Mr. Chairman, normally we have a very good working relationship with applicants, and it says, Andrea Deere indicated, it becomes a very reiterative process. We receive the application, we circulate it, we receive feedback comments, we make suggested changes, the applicant takes that away, they come back with revisions, we reevaluate those revisions, and hopefully we can reach a position where we can recommend approval of the application to Planning Committee and Council. We have sort of periodically, we do get sort of an uptick where we see applications being appealed to the OMB, or what used to be the OMB or the LPAT for non-decision. That was prior to the legislative changes that were brought in a few years back. And I think in the last few months, we have seen a bit of an uptick in terms of non-decision appeals on these potentially controversial applications. I think some members of the development community feel that they will be more successful if they go to the LPAT, either because there may be third-party opposition to their application or that they simply run out of patience in dealing with the city and they're looking to get a timely decision. Part of it can also be a strategic decision on part of the applicant in order to help focus or make their project a priority, in which over other projects, they will then appeal it to the LPAT, and because of the LPAT timelines, it forces the city to sort of drop everything and deal with this application in advance of that LPAT hearing. So I'm hoping that it was just simply because of sort of a backlog coming out of the COVID issue that we're going to stop seeing these sort of 3 or 4 non-decision appeals that we've had. I would note most of the non-decision appeals seem to be involving 1 or 2 law firms, as opposed to our general applicants and clients who work very well with the city, and we reach sort of a win-win situation where we can recommend approval and council approves their application. Thank you.
And just a follow-up question to Councillor Wilson's questions on timeline. We are in a COVID situation, and LPAT hearings had been delayed in the spring of 2020. So are they necessarily going to be jumping the queue and getting their projects through faster, or is, does it still takes time to get a hearing and work through the process, correct?
That is correct. And Patrick can confirm her, but my sense is that just simply by appealing it to the LPAT and having to go through that LPAT process does not necessarily mean that your application will be dealt with in a more timely fashion, as opposed to working with staff and coming up with a project that is sort of a win-win or positive development application. I think it's more of a perception that by appealing it to the LPAT that you will get a time or a faster decision. If you the monthly chart that we report on, we've done a significant amount of work in reducing the backlog in applications. Like in 2020, Planning Committee dealt with a lot of applications that were within 1,000 to 1,500 days had been within the city, but working with the applicant, we were able to bring those forward in a timely fashion. We always work to reduce that backlog and bring applications forward as quickly as possible. One of the ongoing issues that we always have is sort of that, in Mr. Sergi often references this lifetime dead time, where we will receive an application, we will review it, we will provide comments to the applicant, and we may not hear back from them for 3-4 months. And then they will submit the resubmit some information, expect that we will have comments in 15 days, and then they get frustrated and appeal it to the LPAT when it's simply been factors or things that are being beyond our control in the timeframes to process it. We do rely a lot on the applicants to respond and provide that additional information or points of clarification. And sometimes even it's just to say that the changes that are being proposed or asked them to consider simply don't work, whether it's an OBC matter or some other consideration. And then we can look at how we can either mitigate it or come to a decision as to whether or not we can support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Robichaud. And just the last I guess, question and issue I wanted to touch on is the matter of public involvement in this. So when a planning appeal works its way through Planning Committee, through staff, there's an opportunity for the public to be involved, to come to committee, to have their voice heard. We've got a really contentious one, I know, today. Now, if that was to go straight to LPAT, all of that is eliminated. Basically, the public voice is cut out of the process. So just to confirm to me that when a developer goes straight to LPAT, the public isn't able to participate, correct?
The public have a more limited role in the participation in the sense that you as members of committee and council do not get the benefit of hearing from the public and their concerns or support of an application. The individual public, unless they're an incorporated group or agency, have to participate directly into that LPAT process and seek either status to participate in that process, but it becomes a much more adversarial and formal role, I think, going to the LPAT, and for many members of the public, it can be an intimidating process. It's almost like going to court for all intents and purposes, and it doesn't allow for that same sort of informality or that dialogue that we provide through this non-statutory neighborhood information meetings and through planning committee meetings that give the public an opportunity to attend, speak in support or opposition of an application, to ask questions for clarification and get that information that they obtain through the public planning committee public meeting process. And it's always preferable that we go through that process to engage the public, so that way you get community support and community buy-in for that project. And then again, so it becomes part of the community as opposed to something where the community is opposed to a project and is always concerned about a project even after it's built. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the update. So if there's no further discussion, I'm not seeing any. Go to the vote. So this is moved by Councillor Wilson and seconded by Councillor Farr. All in favor or opposed? Thank you. That carries. Trying to flip my pages though, you know. On to our public hearings and written delegations. The public has been advised of how to pre-register to be a virtual delegate at public meetings on today's agenda. Members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council makes a decision regarding the zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment applications before us today, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the local appeal tribunal, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So on 8.1, we have application to amend the City of Hamilton zoning bylaw number 05-200 for lands located at 1031 Highway 52 North in Ancaster in Ward 12. Does committee wish to see the staff presentation on this? Not seeing any desire for the staff presentation. Councillor Wilson, you wish to see the staff presentation? The staff presentation?
Sorry, Chair Danko. Could you just confirm which item you're referencing? I think I got
This is
mixed up.
8.1.
Yes, I would actually.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have Michael Davis.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Just give me 1 second here and I'll pull up my presentation. Happy to walk you through that.
Getting some reverb from you, Michael.
Is that any better, Mr. Chair?
It'll work.
Okay. And I'm assuming you can now see the presentation slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning, members of the Planning Committee. It's Mike Davis. I'm the Senior Planner with the City's Development Planning Team, and pleased to be here this morning. Here to present staff's recommendation report on the zoning bylaw amendment application by Nevin Custom Homes for the property located at 1031 Highway 52 North, Ward 12. So this application seeks to add 2 special site-specific regulations to the existing settlement residential zone that applies to the site. And in doing so, this amendment will implement condition number 2 of an approved consent application for the creation of 3 residential lots served by individual private services on this site. In terms of location, the site's located on the east side of Highway 52 North, It's approximately 200 meters south of Governor's Road, and it's within Coketown Rural Settlement area. In total, the site's 2.35 hectares in size. You can see it's currently vacant, undeveloped. The surrounding sites are largely made up of single detached dwellings. You can see in the southeast portion of the site there is a wetland area that exists. This next series of slides is just to provide three-dimensional context. This is the view looking east from the site entrance along Highway 52 North. This is looking northeast, again from the site entrance along Highway 52 North, and looking north towards Coketown from the site entrance. This is again at the site entrance, but looking towards the rear of the site. And then this is the view looking west across Highway 52. It's an existing retreat center. Sort of by way of background, in November 2019, the Committee of Adjustment granted approval of a consent application for the creation of 3 residential lots on this property. So the image on the screen now, which is attached as Appendix D to the report, is the severance sketch that shows the configuration of those approved lots. And condition number 2 of that approval requires that the applicant obtain approval of a zoning bylaw amendment to, firstly, limit the finished floor area of new single detached dwellings to roughly 3,300 square feet on the entirety of the site. So all 3 future dwellings will be limited in size. And then secondly, to apply a holding provision to Part 3. And the holding provision will prohibit development until completion of a water monitoring program for the single detached dwellings that will be constructed on Parts 1 and 2. And the successful demonstration that the long-term water taking anticipated for Lot 3 is going to be sustainable, and that there'll be no negative impacts to groundwater resources in the area. This site is located within a designated rural settlement area of the Rural Hampton official plan, so limited residential lot creation, single detached dwellings are permitted. The consent application that was approved in 2019 and the conditions associated with that consent application, those deal with the technical aspects of the lot creation. The intent of this rezoning is simply to add these additional regulations that will help us mitigate any potential for impacts to groundwater in the area. So for those reasons and the others detailed in the staff report, staff's recommending approval of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. I appreciate your attention. That concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions from the committee.
I think you're muted again, Mr. Chair.
Yes, more coffee is needed, clearly. Is there any questions for Mr. Davis on the staff presentation? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Chair. Just to be advised that when I'm hitting my to speak or request to speak icon, it's not enabling me, so I am raising my hand accordingly. Thank you very much for that presentation, Michael. Just so I'm clear, on page 6 of the written report, is this parcel, it says the southern portion of the property, it contains a wetland. So there is a wetland on this developable site. Is that the case?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and through the chair, yes, there is a wetland that exists on the southeast portion of the site. Through the consent application, there was a environmental impact study that was conducted. Conceptually, there has been protection zones established around that wetland area. A requirement of future development on this site will be that the applicant go through site plan control for construction of the dwelling, and that will provide a further mechanism to ensure that any dwellings constructed on that Part 1 in proximity to the wetland will be cited such to mitigate any potential for impact on the wetland.
So it is the practice in this municipality to enable development on wetlands. Is that what you're saying, with controls? Through you, Chair.
And through the chair, so the wetland will not be impacted by future development. The wetland will remain intact. The future dwelling, as I mentioned, will be required to be established beyond a protection zone for that wetland area.
Thank you. On page 9 of the report, it says, through the consent application process, a hydrogeological ground study, water study was reviewed and generally approved by Hamilton Water staff. Could you or someone on staff unpack generally approved? Is that, I'm assuming that means that they had some misgivings and then some not, or could you just unpack that language for me, please?
Happy to do so, and through the chair, I think my response to that would be that with the added conditions that we are applying to the site today, that Hamilton, my interpretation of Hamilton Water's perspective at the consent application was that with these added protections, that the hydrogeological work that was done would be sufficient. So what we're doing today is we're adding the holding provision that will allow for the groundwater monitoring to occur before any construction of a dwelling on Part 3. And we're also limiting the size of any dwellings on these future parcels to 3,300 square feet. That is a proxy for limiting the number of bedrooms in these dwellings and a proxy for trying to control the amount of water that those dwellings would demand. So with those two conditions being implemented today, I think there was comfort around the hydrogeological work that was done.
Okay, thank you. If I have time for one final question, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. The condition, if I understood the report, is to monitor for a year. Is that correct, Mr. Davies, is it?
Through the chair, that is correct. The water monitoring will occur for 1 year.
Could you or someone from Hamilton Water, I'll ask you, is that the norm for a period sufficient enough time to monitor, given the sensitivity of water courses and the shifting that happens over time? Is 1 year a sufficient time to assess an impact? Thank you.
I think through the chair, I can speak generally to the fact that I'm not a groundwater specialist. That was the parameters around the consent approval. The Committee of Adjustment decision actually established that 1 year time frame. So from the perspective of implementing that condition, that's the basis for the report. Now, whether that's the right time frame, that would have been discussed during the deliberation of the consent application. Hamilton Water did provide comments on that. They may wish to clarify whether it was their desire that it be 1 year or whether they had other thoughts around that.
Thank you. That was very helpful, Michael. If I could just understand what you just said, you're saying that it was at the Committee of Adjustment where the time frame of a year was applied, not necessarily from a hydrological expert. Is that what you just said?
I think through the chair, so my recommendation today through this zoning bylaw amendment is implementing the Committee of Adjustment decision. I think June Christie, Senior Project Manager on the rural team, has more history on the consent application. She may be able to speak to whether that 1 year time frame was recommended by staff or if that was simply a decision of the Committee of Adjustment that was against the staff recommendation.
Yeah, good morning, Planning Committee. Through the chair, to clarify, at the Committee of Adjustment meeting, Hamilton Water had recommended a minimum of 2 years. I believe the proponent raised their hand and wanted 1 year. I think the decision is to monitor for at least a year. We're just drafting the monitoring agreement as we speak, and it will be definitely for a period of longer than 1 year. But the committee decided at least a year.
Thank you. That's helpful. If I could, Mr. Chair, just pursue this a little further.
You are just past your time, but finish up your line of questioning.
If you could help in terms of public accountability, Hamilton Water recommends a minimum, you said, of 2 years. Of course, the applicant, I'm sure, would wanted it shorter, so they pushed for 1. Where do we hold, how do we have what is the role of the public in overseeing, or this committee in that negotiation to ensure that we're providing our appropriate stewardship responsibility?
Well, the public can speak at the Committee of Adjustment meeting. I believe there were some people that spoke, but I assure you Hamilton Water retains professional consultants in peer reviewing. And indeed, in this case, there was a study done, a hydrological study that was peer reviewed. So I have quite good confidence that whatever period of time they recommended is good for the community.
As do I. But my question is, where is that decision made, and how is it publicly made available of where we land on the period of monitoring?
The decision was made at the Committee of Adjustment meeting, and then there's a notice of decision that's available to the public. And in that decision, one of the conditions was that there would be monitoring for at least a year. So does that help you?
I'm sorry. No, it's not answering my question.
Okay.
I understand that. You're
Councilor
saying
Wilson.
monitoring at least a year. I'm trying to, at what point is the decision made? You're saying the experts that Hamilton Water brought in, hydrological experts, are recommending a minimum of 2 years. I'm trying to understand where in the process are we afforded the knowledge of where that time frame actually lands. Is it minimum 1, or is it 2? Or if it's a minimum of 2, is it 5? I'm just trying to understand where.
The monitoring agreement has not been completed. You ask a good question. I believe the text in the agreement mentions up to 5 years. We're just in discussions now, but I believe that we're probably going to land on 2 years. We've been in touch in discussions with Hamilton Water and our legal staff who are monitoring, or sorry, who are drafting the agreement. So, and that's for the first 2 lots that are developed. That's why we're doing the rezoning today. There's a hold on the 3rd lot because we want to identify if there's any negative impacts. So the monitoring will start immediately after the second house is developed.
Sorry, Councillor, you're over time. So I'm going to go.
I'll cede the floor. If you could put me back on, please. I'm still needing clarity. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, could you just confirm for me? I'm looking online that there's no public delegations or written objections or support for this application. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Okay. I did have significant public consultation during the severance process, but I'll talk about that later because typically I like to wait for the owner's agent to come on and hear what he has to say, and then I'll give my comments at that time.
Okay.
Has the owner's agent asked to speak here?
Yes, they're in attendance.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. And we'll go back to any other first-time speakers on this. Nope. Okay, Councillor Wilson, going back to you.
Thank you, Chair Danko. Just if I may, back to it's June, is it?
Yes, June.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm just not clear yet, June, on where that discussion, if you could help educate me, takes place on the monitoring period, and what is the role of the committee, if any, in its determination, And then how will we be apprised? Thank you.
Right. Through the severance process, Hamilton Water provides comments and their expertise on any severance application, particularly in the rural area. So that goes straight to the Committee of Adjustment. So the committee members, all of them have access to those comments. This was a very long process. So the applicant has submitted revised hydro-G studies, and then they're finally approved. Okay. At the time that this was heard, this application was heard three times by the committee. It was tabled twice so that the applicant could continue to revise their hydro-G study. The third time that it was heard, the committee, in their approval, they debated whether it should be a 2-year monitoring program, which was the recommendation of Hamilton Water, or a lesser period. There's minutes to that. There's public minutes to that meeting. And then I believe that the committee softened the 2-year by saying at least a year. Through the chair, I'd like to ask the councillor if that is enough information, or I'm just trying to probe her if what I'm saying is helping. Sorry, councillor.
No, yes, of
Yeah.
course. You're enriching my understanding very much. So through Chair Danko, but so June, sorry, I'm probably a bit slow this morning. So I think what I've heard you say then is the deliberation of the monitoring period that decision will ultimately be going back to the Committee of Adjustment. Did I hear you say that?
No,
June?
sorry.
No. Okay,
Sorry. The decision was made at the meeting, I think it was in November of last year. So that was the third time this application was heard.
Yeah.
It was untabled. The Hamilton Waters recommendation was 2 years minimum. The committee members heard the applicant and they debated, okay, and they kind of softened, I guess is the right word, the condition to be at least a year. And what I was saying to you before is that we're drafting the monitoring agreement right now because they need an executed agreement to get their severance finally approved. So we're saying it will be 2 years.
Oh, you are?
That is in the agreement, correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that, June, and thank you for your help.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Any further discussion on the staff presentation? I'm not seeing any. So I need a mover and a seconder to receive the staff presentation. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. And we'll vote on that, and then we'll move on to the developer's agent. Thank you. That carries. So we have Eric Samblier with S. Lewin and Associates Limited and Gary Nevin, the owner, are in attendance. And Eric, I ask you to turn your microphone and video on if you're there.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yes. There you are.
Perfect. Yeah, no video for me. Sorry. Just on my work computer here. So, so you know, Mr. Chair, we were here just you know, basically to tell you that we are in support of the 2 zoning bylaw amendments for the holding and the limit of size of these buildings. And
sorry, just 1 second, Eric.
Yep.
June, I think you're still unmuted, so if you don't.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay. Yeah, so we're here, just to show our support for the rezoning. We are also here should there be any questions on the rezoning. Now, I didn't know if you wanted me to get more into the hydrological aspect that was, based on the committee hearing. I I definitely can speak to that.
It's up to you. You can add anything that you think is pertinent to the discussion this afternoon, or you can wait for
Okay.
questions from committee.
Okay. I mean, so this was something that was pre-discussed and predetermined and pre-agreed upon. The reason why the 1 year to the 2 years came up was all hydrological typical requirements from the city of Hamilton is for a 1 year monitoring. Our testing had to be done in the fall season, which the city of Hamilton identifies as the lowest water period. And so the reason for the 1 year testing was that we would hit that low period. Now, there is currently water monitoring in the first well that has been drilled that is monitoring as we speak. So the monitoring will be 1 year from the completion of the second unit and when the second people have taken possession and are inhabiting the second building. So you will get full monitoring for as long as it takes Gary to build the second house and have somebody inhabit the second house. So that monitoring could be multiple years up to a minimum of 1 year.
Okay.
So just to clarify what's going on. And the reason why it was brought up because the city standard is only for 1 year, and they made comment to increase it to 2 years. And we had our hydrological consultant at the hearing with us, and he brought that up that all the city standards are only for 1 year, so why have this increased to 2 years? And staff said, yeah, well, it doesn't make sense to make that increase because you are hitting the low period for groundwater level in the fall by having it have to go through the full 1 year monitoring period.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the owner's agent from committee? Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I just want to be clear, and I don't know whether Eric or Gary, you need to answer this, but you did put a test well down a couple of years ago and have been pulling on that, drawing it down to test it. Can you just confirm that happened? And secondly, what the results of those tests were?
Yeah, we have drilled a well and did our testing, and that is the testing that the city has to review. So through our testing, we found that the groundwater provided a rate in that first well that did not meet one of the requirements from the city. So from that well, we are having to either, right now we're having to put a cistern on that well if we continue with that.
And Eric, you also monitored neighbors' wells, did you not?
Yes, we did. That was a part that we monitored neighbors' wells. So the cone that I'm not the hydrologist here, sorry, but I'm not a hydro G guy, but the cone of interference was extremely small from the testing. So there was no interference on any of the neighboring wells. What is taken from wells on Gary's property will not affect any of the adjoining properties.
Okay. That's all the questions I have right now, Mr. Chairman, but I do want to comment after they're finished.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I add?
No, you. Sorry, let me just clarify with the clerk. This is.
Who was that? Was that Gary Nevin?
That's Gary Nevin, yes. Okay.
Well, he's the owner. I'd love to hear what he has to say, Mr. Chair.
Yep, I just confirmed with the clerk that he's listed as one of the speakers. So go ahead, Gary.
So just to confirm, there is a well on site. Typically, when wells are installed, they do a 1 hour pump test. We actually did a 6 hour pump test as requested by Source Water. Then there's, in addition to the one well that we installed, there was 3 test wells installed around the perimeter of the property. And those 3 test wells, there was no adverse effect to any of those test wells around the perimeter of the property when we did the 6 hour test on the one well that would be used for a future residential home. My understanding is we are making this more restrictive because of Source Water's concerns about water. Instead of just allowing us to build 3 houses, we've agreed to just build 2 houses, and then 12 months after they're both occupied, so this could be 2 to 3 years of monitoring. Then and only then will we be, if we're successful, that we've proven no adverse effect, then and only then will we be allowed to apply for building the 3rd house. So in my opinion, we're adding a lot more restrictions than we normally are. And June's comment that the legal agreement is going to ask for 2 years, that's new information to me, because I thought that was dealt with at the Committee of Adjustment meeting that I believe you were at, Councillor Ferguson, where it was decided that 1 year beyond the occupancy of the second home would be enough. I hope that's helpful.
Councillor?
Yeah, that's great, Gary. And so if the delegates can, wouldn't be, is it appropriate to do my comments now, or do you want to wait to receive the?
We'll receive the owner's presentation, and then we'll go to the report.
Okay, I'll move it be received if that's timely.
Okay. Any further discussion on from the agent? Not seeing it. Councillor Partridge, you're going to second, or do you want to speak? You're going to second. Okay. So moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Partridge to receive the agent's delegation. Favor. Or opposed. Thank you. That's carried. And then I need a mover and a seconder to close the public meeting. Moved by Councillor Collins, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. We'll get a vote on that. We'll go to the report. Okay, so we're on the report. I just need a mover and a seconder to put it on the floor. Councillor Ferguson, do you want to move it?
Sure.
Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Johnson. And then for discussion on the report, Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think the day after the last election, my phone started to ring from people in the Coketown area about this development, because there's been an ongoing problem with people a little further away than this location, but more towards Highway 299, where they were losing the wells because it was a very dry summer back in, I think it was 2018. And we had to get CN engaged, and because CN has a railway track, runs right parallel to 299, and they have a big cut where the tracks were put in. The reason for that is because they're climbing out of Hamilton and Dundas, and the maximum grade they can have on the tracks is 2%. So they had to have a big, deep cut on the north side of 299 in order to meet that grade. Well, the water table is very high in that area, and they were having trouble with their tracks floating. And so they had to put wells in to allow the artesian activity to bring the water table down, and that's what was causing problems with the neighbors' wells. CN stepped up to the plate and helped those people out, and it's no longer an issue. But on this particular application, I did have a number of neighbors contacted me about the severance application because that was being posted. And I had the opportunity to meet them in my boardroom in Ancaster, I believe twice. And there, there was the normal concerns about increased traffic and the change going on, but the big one was, how is this going to affect my water well because of the problems that they're having in other parts of Copetown? And so I did appear before the Committee of Adjustment with the neighbors and got it deferred until Source Water could do all their testing. I did meet with the applicant, Gary Nevin, on site and saw what the test well was and where they were pumping on it. And I think myself, well, the fact that they tested right along the perimeter of the property too, and monitored the neighbors well to show that there was no activity. So the objection to this gradually dissipated. And I find it very interesting today because I probably had 20 people contact me with the severance application was in. As June said, it went back to Committee of Adjustment 3 times and ultimately approved. And that's because they were able to demonstrate to the neighbors that their wells will not be impacted. Plus CN played a major role in fixing the whole elevation of the water table a little further north, but it gave the residents around this development concern. So I find it very interesting that none of them are here today. So they must be satisfied. And it meets all the planning requirements as the planner explained to us. I know June Christie has been very involved in this since the start. And so because they've solved the neighbors' issues and because it meets all the planning requirements, I'm prepared to support it today, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Further discussion on the report, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just go back, I was skimming the report again. June established for us that they've arrived for 2 years for the monitoring. Could I ask the process thereafter? What happens if it's determined that there is a negative impact after that 2-year period? Is that ironclad, or does the applicant, must the applicant hold to that agreement, or is there an appeal avenue thereafter? Thank you. Through you, Chair.
Through the chair. I'm going to speak briefly, and then I believe Mike Christie is at the meeting now, and he can ask. He's from Hamilton Water, and he's would be a great help in this discussion. But to answer your question, that holding that is the subject of the rezoning application today cannot be lifted unless there's a satisfactory outcome of the monitoring. So they cannot develop that third lot unless there is. But I'll let Mike, are you here?
Hi, June. Yes, through the chair, Mike Christie, project manager in source protection planning in Hamilton Water. Yeah, Councillor Wilson, just so you're aware, within our guidelines for hydrogeological studies and technical standards for these rural developments, one of the key pieces is a pumping test to really demonstrate that the well and the aquifer on site can supply the needs of the uses without impacting neighboring well owners. So those pumping tests were undertaken prior to approval. And it was shown through peer review and our own review that the extent of the impact of the water taking for these 3 dwellings would be entirely found within the properties themselves without impacting neighboring property owners. And that was really the basis as to why we continued with that approval. The monitoring agreement there is really just to capture any anomalies or maybe additional takings that wouldn't be typically captured within a typical use, let's say for irrigation of your lawn, things like that. We really just wanted to better understand the day-to-day uses from the water takings, just to really ensure that any impacts would be entirely contained within the property without impacting neighboring properties. With respect to the monitoring agreement and the duration, really at the end of the day, we want to make sure that that monitoring would continue if there were any potential negative impacts observed. We don't anticipate that to be the case, but we wanted to make sure that this monitoring agreement was there as a backup, as a fail-safe in case there were, especially with the local issues experienced in Coketown with respect to water supply that Councillor Ferguson was mentioning earlier.
Mhm.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Christie. I appreciate that. Back to my question about the planning process, though, just so I can understand when that holding, if the holding provision, for example, the scenario that there were some problems that were generated, that holding provision would have to hold, for lack of a better word, and it couldn't, that's not a ground for the applicant to appeal, is it? Through you, Mr. Chair, to June, I guess.
I believe I might have to defer this to Steve Robichaud. I'm not sure if you can appeal a rezoning, a holding. I'm not sure.
Steve, are you able to assist? I saw Anita there as well, maybe.
Good morning, Anita Fayback, Manager of Development Planning, Heritage and Design. The applicant is, let me try that again. There is an opportunity to appeal after this statutory public meeting. So once we give notice of passing of a bylaw, there is an appeal period, and that would be the time that appeals could be made. The applicant, with the holding provision, the applicant will continue to work with staff to get to a point where either they are able to satisfy the holding requirement and then they can apply to lift it. That bylaw goes directly to council for council approval to lift the bylaw. If for some reason, or alternatively, if it was determined in some other cases, years pass and we determine that the holding provision no longer applies, maybe something changed, a road got constructed or something is changed that would then deem that holding provision to not apply, and then we could lift it at that point. But ultimately, until this holding provision is satisfied, that lot could not be developed.
Furthermore, to the councillor's question, the applicant has the right to appeal council's failure to make a decision on an application to remove the holding symbol to the LPAT, at which time they would have to demonstrate to the LPAT how they met the requirements of the initial holding symbol. While there's no rights for third-party appeals to the lifting of a holding symbol, anybody who writes in and notifies the clerk that they wish to be notified that the holding symbol is to be lifted will receive notice from the clerk's department prior to the council meeting, at which time the amending bylaw will be considered to lift the holding symbol. Thank you.
So thank you both. Just in summary, to make sure I understand, if this application is approved, a holding provision is put on, it's monitored for 2 years. If it is determined that there may be a detrimental impact, and therefore the holding provision stays, and so that third parcel cannot be developed, you're saying that the applicant can appeal it. Is that what you just said? I'm sorry, Mr. Robichaud.
That is correct. If the applicant is of the opinion, through Mr. Chairman, that they have demonstrated that there is no adverse impact and that the holding symbol should be removed, and the city refuses to remove the holding symbol, the applicant would have the right to appeal to the LPAT council's refusal to lift the holding symbol, at which time they would argue at the LPAT why they felt that the holding symbol should be removed, and that city staff would then provide our information and evidence as to why we felt that the holding symbol should not be removed. And then ultimately the LPAT would have to make a decision whether or not to agree with the applicant that the holding symbol should or should not be removed. Thank you. It's very unusual that an applicant disputes the lifting of a holding. I cannot recall of any circumstances in the city where the applicant and city staff have not been able to reach an agreement as to whether or not the holding should be removed at that point in time. Thank you.
Councillor?
Thank you. And just so I understand, if I could ask a question back to the wetland, the determination that there's no detrimental effect is that's something that the applicant had a consultant review and then we peer, like, how does that work in terms of the determining that?
Just before you answer, June, Councilor
Sure.
Wilson, you are just over your 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, June.
Okay. Through the chair, through the severance process, there was environmental impact study that was done. It was approved by our city staff. It actually did go to ESAG as well. And it through that process, the configuration of the lots, the southern lot where the wetland is much larger than the other two. And that is, so we haven't fragmented that wetland. It is to remain on that southern property. And the house that would be built will be put through a minor site plan so that we can fix the location of the house so it's properly set, the appropriate distance from the boundaries of that wetland. But yes, this went through quite a long process with ESAG involvement. Thank you.
Thank you for the latitude, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, June. That was very helpful for me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'm not seeing any. So we have the report and the staff recommendation on the table. It's moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Johnson. We're going to go to the vote on the report. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. And then finally, to mover and a seconder to approve the report recommendations as amended. Moved by Councillor Partridge, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. All in favor? Again, that is approved unanimously. Thank you. On to 8.2 is the city initiative CI-20-A to amend the Urban Hamilton official plan and zoning bylaw for lands located at 1400 Baseline Road in Stony Creek in Ward 10. Does the committee wish to see the staff presentation? Councillor Johnson? Yes. Councillor Pearson? Yes. Okay. So we have Alyssa Mahood.
Great. Thank you very much. Just bear with me for a second and I'll bring up the presentation. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. My name is Alyssa Mahood. I'm the Senior Project Manager at the City of Hamilton with Community Planning, and I'm here today to present to you the city-initiated official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for the city-owned property located at 1400 Baseline Road in Stony Creek, Ward 10. The subject lands are located just north of the QEW and are bounded by Baseline Road to the north, Lockport Way to the west, and the North Service Road to the south. The property abuts an existing residential townhouse development to the east. The subject lands are currently owned by the city and historically were intended for use as a tourism gateway center by the Ministry of Transportation. In 2017, the property was identified by the Affordable Housing Site Selection Subcommittee to be part of a disposition strategy to create more affordable housing. So all proceeds from the sale of these lands are to be used to fund future affordable housing projects within the City of Hamilton. The property was also identified as a property that would benefit from updating the planning instruments prior to sale. In 2018, the Ministry of Transportation indicated they no longer needed the property for the tourism center, thereby making them available for development. And the city then declared the land surplus and has been exploring options to divest the property. On May 14th of 2019, City Council passed a motion directing staff to update the land use and zoning for the property to make them development ready and to reflect the highest and best use development potential of the site. Staff then commenced the city-initiated official plan and zoning bylaw amendment process. The subject property has a frontage of about 175 meters along Baseline Road and is approximately 80 meters deep for a total of 1.17 hectares in size. It's currently vacant and is on municipal services. It's surrounded by single-family dwellings and townhouses to the north and east, and a neighborhood commercial plaza to the west, as well as 50 Point Conservation Area is located to the northeast of the property. Photos 1 and 2 were taken looking south from Baseline Road and Lockport Way to the subject lands. Photos 3 and 4 were also taken from Baseline Road looking north at the residential development on Raintree Drive. Photo 5 is a photo of the townhouse development adjacent to the east side of the property. And photo 6 was taken from Baseline Road looking west to the commercial plaza. Currently, the lands are designated low-density residential 2B in the urban area secondary plan. This designation permits single-detached, semi-detached, and duplex dwellings with a density range of 1 to 29 units per net residential hectare. Planning staff carried out a number of 3D modeling exercises to test a variety of built forms and heights suitable for the property that would reflect its highest and best use development potential while respecting the character of the existing residential developments in the north and east. Due to the size and location of this property, a variety of residential built forms can be accommodated and achieved. The planning analysis that was carried out demonstrated that a medium density designation would be suitable for the lands for the following reasons. The site is large enough to provide sufficient setbacks and stepbacks to ensure impacts of medium density form of development are contained within the site. The site is located on the periphery of the neighborhood close to major transportation routes and a recreation area. These are ideal location qualities for medium density residential development as identified in the policies of Volume 1 of the Urban Hamilton Official Plan. And the medium density designation would provide a unique opportunity in this area for a mix of dwelling types other than the predominant grade-related dwelling types found in this area. Such a mix can allow for opportunities to age in place and alternative housing options for the 50 Point neighborhood. The official plan amendment that's before you today proposes to redesignate the lands from the low density residential 2B designation to the medium density residential 3 in the urban area Lakeshore secondary plan. The current medium density residential designation of the secondary plan permits only 9-story apartment buildings. So a site-specific policy area has been added to include all forms of multiple dwellings. This will allow this site to be developed for uses such as townhouse developments and masonettes, and this is consistent with the uses that are permitted in the medium density designation of Volume 1 of the official plan. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment will rezone the property from the neighborhood development zone, which only permits uses that existed on the date of passing of the bylaw, to the multiple residential RM3 zone with a holding provision and modified. There are a number of modifications that have been made to the zoning that are explained in Appendix D to the staff report, and they include the following: modifications to side and rear yard setbacks to accommodate amenity areas and provide separation distances between the site and adjacent uses. Modification to the maximum building heights for apartment buildings to allow a maximum of 33 meters, which equals 9 stories, to the medium, to align with the medium density designation maximum height permission of 9 stories. It also requires setbacks and stepbacks for the building as height increases to ensure that there's an appropriate transition to the neighboring properties and to ensure any impacts such as shadows are contained within the site for any building greater than 3 stories. And there are modifications as well to the minimum parking requirements that reflect current practice and align with parking standards in zoning bylaw 05200. A holding provision has also been added to the zoning to ensure that the site can be adequately serviced for water and sanitary and that any impacts related to traffic are mitigated. So no development can be approved until servicing and traffic matters have been addressed. Any residential development proposal would also be subject to a future site plan application. Stormwater, grading, and traffic matters will also be further reviewed in detail at that time. Notice of the public meeting was posted in the Hamilton Spectator and the Stony Creek News in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. A letter was also mailed to all residents within 120 meters of the subject property. Staff recommends that the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment have merit and can be supported for the following reasons. The size and location of the property make it a suitable site for medium density residential development. It's located on the periphery of the 50-point neighborhood with access to an arterial road in close proximity to both the neighborhood commercial area, major transportation routes, and recreational uses. These characteristics are suitable for medium density development. The proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment provides the opportunity for a mix of housing types in the 50-point neighborhood. The proposed zoning regulations will facilitate residential development that will respect the existing neighborhood character and development patterns. And the holding provision will ensure that the provision of infrastructure upgrades that may be required for servicing and traffic are implemented to facilitate the development of the site. The proposed amendments are consistent with the provincial policy statement and conform to the growth plan, and they comply with the intent of the Urban Hamilton official plan. As I stated earlier, proceeds from the sale of these lands would go towards funding the future affordable housing projects within the city. This concludes my presentation for today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Alyssa. I have two speakers on my list, Councillor Pearson, followed by Councillor Johnson. And if you could just take down your presentation. Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Alyssa. Great presentation. And I want to thank staff for working on this. This has been a long time coming. I know that Alyssa mentioned the MTO relinquished these lands as surplus ORC lands in 2018, but I believe these lands were actually acquired by the city in 2008, just for clarity. And under the requirements of the ORC, and Councillor Johnson will remember it very well, that the city has to maintain or use lands that are purchased through the ORC in a time period. We have to keep it for at least 10 years. Let's simplify that. And there was discussion of selling it before the 10 years were up, and certainly support of holding on to it so that the city could do something with these lands without having to pay everything back to the province, because those were the regulations, the requirements at that day. They are now different. Just for committee's information, if you purchase lands now from the ORC, you have to retain them for at least 20 years, or everything has to be paid back to the province, including the profits made off it. But anyways, for that initiative, we also looked at, and I'll ask Alyssa, there was also, you mentioned the Affordable Housing Site Selection Committee, and the sale of these lands will provide funding to go into the pot for affordable housing for the city of Hamilton, which is great news. And there will also be, because it was moved by motion 2018 by Councillor Johnson and myself, that funds go into a pot to assist with ongoing traffic issues and traffic calming initiatives in the Winona 50 Road area due to the major intensification from the Costco site. Could you just answer that, Alyssa?
Through the chair to the councillor. Yep, that is correct. And we did hear quite some concern in the written submissions about traffic. And that is another reason why we put a holding on the property as well, that any upgrades that are required from this development would have to be done through the applicant or the future owner as well.
Thank you for that. I won't go on in my dialogue on this, but I just want to ask the questions. Alyssa, in the report and in the advertising that went out, it says 9-story. It doesn't say maximum. I noticed a number of the attachments that we received, and this is the first that I've had a number of these. I've received 3, possibly 4 emails or calls with regards to this application. We do not put maximum height. Can you just please elaborate? I don't recall that we've ever done that, but is that something that can be done?
Yep, through the chair to the councillor. So there is a maximum height. It's up to 9 stories in the official plan. And I think there was just they were misunderstanding when they were reading the zoning bylaws. So for apartment buildings, if you go to the second page of the zoning bylaw, the way it's printed, it is the first story has to be a maximum of 7.5 meters. Then anything greater, you still have to set back the property, the building from the front and side yard properties equal to whatever height that is. to a maximum of 33 meters, which would give you 9 stories. So if you wanted to put a 9-story building on that property, that building would have to be set back 33 meters from the front and side property line to make sure that any impacts of that building would be contained within the site. So there is a maximum, actually.
Thank you for that clarification, because it's been very questionable by residents who've read the advertising, etc. So, Alyssa, you mentioned that modeling was done. So the modeling was done taking all of this into consideration, correct?
Yep, through the chair, yes, it was done. So we did look at, we did a really intense scenario, setting aside density and just looking at what could we get as a maximum development that may be alarming to residents that would fit on the site. It wouldn't meet the zoning requirements. It would be too intense, but we looked at 2 9-story buildings and shadows from that would be contained, but it probably wouldn't be possible with the density cap. It would be too intense. So, but we did some other scenarios and it looks like most likely it would be a grade related development. We think with the number of towns you could get townhouse developments or even semi-detached. Yeah, or you maybe one apartment building, but I'm not sure that it would actually be 9 stories. I think you're more likely to look at something more grade related, but we wanted to provide that opportunity in case there was a need for that in the area.
Right. Thank you for that clarification, because really the whole zoning is to allow some intensification, certainly in what will fit in there. So it could be townhouses, it could be masonettes, it could be 1 to 9-story. We don't know. But we were trying to do with safeguard, because the city is selling this, and hopefully whoever purchases will follow the direction of staff in your modeling to see that what will fit in that. And there will certainly be ongoing dialogue with regards to site plan, correct?
Yep, correct, through the chair. Also, there is that component of transportation and servicing that needs to be addressed. So depending on what services are available and what upgrades are required, we may not see as intensive a development on the site as well.
Thank you for that. But we wanted to try and allay the opportunity, once it's zoned by the city, of further applications coming in.
Yeah, that is correct. And we wanted to make sure that the lands were development ready so that there would be an applicant would be able to come right into site plan and remove the holding as needed.
Thank you. And I just, if my time allows me, I just want to ask 2 more questions. One is the 120 meter distribution of notices, because I couldn't have a neighborhood meeting. How many notices were sent out, and how many objections are only the objections that we received today? Is that all that's been received?
Yeah, through the chair. I actually don't know how many notices were sent out because the clerks took care of that for us. I can get that number for you. I didn't receive any contacts personally except for a voice message just concerning traffic. Everything else was made through the written submissions. So there was concerns about traffic and the fact that they thought that there was no height maximum for the site as well. So.
Right, thank you for that. So if you could ask the clerk to provide me with the information of the number of notices that did go out within the 120 meter. And I'm not sure if you can answer this, Alyssa, only that it will put in context. So the lands are on the east side of the 50 road overpass. What is the land, and I know that was zoned before I became the councillor of the area, what's the lands? There's another sort of area that used to be possibly ORC as well. What is it zoned? And I don't have the address available to me, but I think if you go to your slide projections, you'll see that there's a piece of land, again, on the north of the North Service Road and between Baseline Road.
Are you, through the chair, are you speaking about the property adjacent directly to this site?
Well, no, that's the townhouses to the east. I'm talking to the west side.
I don't have that information, but I could get that for you. I'm assuming if it's residential, majority of the zoning surrounding this area is either RM3 or RM5 or RM2. So it's multiple residential, generally ranging from single family to townhouse development. I could provide you with the official plan amendment or official plan designation if you wanted.
Yeah, I just wanted to, so my colleagues can understand that there is also intensification of residential proposed in a number of the locations on the west side of the, well, actually it's on the east side, but just as the North Service Road comes around, of 50 Road. So I just wanted to put that on the table. So, Mr. Chairman, those are my questions. If I can come back later for comments, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Johnson. muted, Councillor Johnson.
My apologies. Alyssa, it's been a long time. It's good to see you again. So, as councillor person noted earlier, this was my ward until 2018. So, just to give some clarity here, I believe that the property that councillor Pearson was just referring to is was slated for development. It was approved, and it was 3-story, and it was on the grade, which means that it would really look like a 2-story because it was down in almost like a pit. The second thing I wanted to clarify here was that last term, the motion that Councillor Pearson was referring to was actually the sale of the property was to go to not only traffic concerns, but it was mainly to build sidewalks on both overpasses of 50 and Winona Road. So I really want to get that clarified, please, to make sure, because that community has been waiting a long time for those sidewalks to be built. It's MTO jurisdiction. We finally got permission from them last term, so that's why we did the motion the way we did, was to allow that money so Mr. Sergi could get going on that. So right now, my question through you, Mr. Chair, to Alyssa. Right now, the city owns this property, as Councillor Pearson referred to. It was bought by the ORC, and it was slated for a gateway. And then that was put to the wayside, and it was low density. Alyssa, is there any way you can give us a bit of history as to how it ended up becoming low density in the first place? Because my understanding was it was zoned to be a gateway.
Yep, through the chair to the councillor. The property has historically been designated as low density in the urban area Lakeshore Secondary Plan. The zoning was a ND zone, which is a neighborhood development that only permits uses that existed on the date. It would have needed a rezoning for the Gateway Center. Yeah, so I think I think the intent of these lands were for low density residential in the future, but the Gateway Center would have been a permitted use once the zoning was updated for the site. I don't know what it was before when it was in the Stony Creek official plan. I'm pretty sure it was also residential, because when we brought forward these secondary plans, we respected the original land use designations.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to give you just a preamble here. I didn't have prior notice that this was coming, so I'm really sorry, Alyssa. I'm just going through this with you. It's hard to be representative of an area and live in the area for the last 30 years and not be concerned. So my understanding is that it is a maximum of 9 stories. Anything east of Fruitland Road, there's nothing more than 2.5 stories. So can you please reiterate how the 9-story came about?
Yeah, through the chair. When we started looking at the planning analysis for this area, we were looking at what would be its highest and best use development potential. The fact that the property is so large, we started looking at the medium density residential designation that is in the Urban Lakeshore Area Secondary Plan, which already permits up to 9 stories. There's one site in the plan that was designated as such. So we took a look at that property, or at that designation, and at the density, and we started doing some 3D modeling to see what could be accommodated on the site. We're trying to, provide for a different form of housing option that is sort of missing in the Urban Lakeshore Area Secondary Plan, and we found that this was a good site to accommodate that. It was close to the 50-point conservation area and transportation routes, so we thought this would be an opportunity to potentially get some different form of housing. It doesn't mean that we don't know what's going to happen when the development application comes in. It also permits the townhouse developments as well. So, but we wanted to at least provide that opportunity in an area that we felt was lacking that type of housing option. And it was suitable from a planning perspective. It does meet the tests and the requirements and the official plan as to where you would locate a medium density residential development.
Okay, so that's where the 9-story came from. Why are we rezoning this now? Why are we not waiting to see when we sell it to see what the potential buyer wants to do with it?
I think initially we did think about that and we contemplated maybe just bringing forward the official plan amendment, but we were trying to make these lands development ready so that the potential owner wouldn't have to go through that process. It's a lengthy process and can be costly. So we were trying to get these ready for market so that we would be able to benefit from the sale of those lands and the money that we would receive.
So it's really to increase the market value.
Yes, as one component of it, but I think as well is also looking at what would be the best use of that property and what the city would foresee as what we'd like to see it in the future. I think it's not just monetary, but also a good planning. You know, it makes sense from a good planning perspective to have those lands ready.
Thank you for that. And my next question, and it's dovetailing on Councillor Pearson's 120 meter question, just to give people an idea that this particular neighborhood has two entrances, Lockport being one, and you'll see it on the map on Appendix A, or sorry, Appendix A. The other one is Panorama Way. So we have all these houses in there that only have two entrances. This, whatever is built there, is going to have an impact on one of those entrances. That's going to impact all the rest of the people that live in that area. So if that's the case, why the 120 meters was just within that 120 meters? Why was it not fanned out for that entire block that's going to be affected by this right or wrong, negative or positive, they're going to be affected by this development? Why would there not be that decision to say, we need to fan this one out? You know as well as I do, Alyssa, this is a long time for you and I. I've always felt that the whole community should know, not just the 6 houses that back onto it.
Yeah, through the chair. So our statutory public notice was posted in the Spectator and the Stony Creek News.
Right,
So
I
that
got that.
meets the requirements. So the notice that was actually sent out was not the statutory notice. It was an information notice. So
I know.
we did stick to the 120 meters as per the Planning Act, but we were, because it is a city initiated amendment, we generally do our notices in the newspaper for notice.
Okay, so just to give you everybody an idea, the kitty corner from this property is the famous Winona Costco, and the 120 meters, believe it or not, reached no one. This was an application that very much impacted an entire community. So this is on the same sort of lines where you've got the 4 properties now that are going to be up for grabs, and this is one thing that I think that the community would really benefit from. When we finally fanned it out to the rest of the community for the Winona Costco, it actually it brought in a lot of input, but it also, I think, made that development a lot better because of that community input. So I'm just putting that out there. Okay, so now affordable housing. This is the first I've heard that the money's going to affordable housing, 100%. That's great as long as we get our sidewalks and the traffic calming in. But my question is there going to be a caveat on this that 10%, at least 10%, has to be affordable housing? Money can go towards affordable housing. Why can we not put the money towards, or why can we not make the bylaw 10% affordable housing?
Through the chair to the councillor, I'm actually not sure how. So there's nothing in our zoning bylaw amendment or official plan that stipulates how much percentage of the money has to go to affordable housing. I think this is something that was.
Oh no, I'm sorry, Alyssa. I don't mean to cut you off. This isn't where the money goes. Why can we not put it in the zoning bylaw that 10% of what is being built is affordable housing?
If I can assist the councillor.
Oh, thank you, Steve.
A zoning bylaw cannot regulate tenure in the sense of whether it would be ownership, condominium, cooperative, or some other form of tenure, or what would be the rental rate or the price of a dwelling unit. However, since the city is disposing of this asset, that would have to be a decision of the city through that land use disposition process if they wanted to have a requirement to include an affordable housing component, which may in this case not necessarily be what we consider affordable housing as an assisted, but it may meet that sort of shallow need, which would be like 90% of market rent or something to that effect. But that would have to be a follow-up discussion with in terms of how we real estate in terms of the strategy for the disposition of this property by virtue of the type of dwelling units that are, through a multiple dwelling, and often the smaller units, they lend themselves to being more providing opportunities for affordable. But if the committee or council wanted to get directly into what those sort of units would be selling for or renting for, then that would be something that would almost like a restrictive covenant that would be incorporated through that sales agreement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve and
Sorry,
Alyssa.
Councillor, Councillor, I'm just going to interrupt you just over your 5 minutes, but you
I
can
am.
finish it. You can finish off your
If I
train of
can,
thought.
just that would be wonderful. Thank you. So the 120 meters is a real concern for me, and I also have a lot of planning applications coming forward. Actually, you know what, Chair, I'll wait and I'll do my comments after Councillor Pearson or before Councillor Pearson, please. Wherever Councillor Pearson, I'll cede to her. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Pearson, did you want to speak on the report or on continue on the presentation?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I don't know why this happens. We have just too many buttons to push to get out of mute. So no, I just wanted to give my closing comments. But if, you know what, I'm here now, so let me just say, again, as I said earlier, I thank staff for this. I mean, it is an initiative. It's trying to get money in the pot to do two things. The one is obviously to put dollars into the City of Hamilton affordable housing pot for projects to go forward. And secondly, and for me, and I know Councillor Brenda Johnson, who's dealt with this in the past, is the dollars to go to the traffic concerns and initiatives in this area. And I appreciate Councillor Johnson mentioning sidewalks, absolutely. So on our overpasses, for our committee's indulgence, we don't have sidewalks on the overpasses. And I know many years ago, Councillor Collins may still be sitting in, when all 5 overpasses were redone by the province a number of years ago. We had asked that question. The province said no, they weren't putting sidewalks in because they weren't there. So it's a major project. It's a major initiative, but because Winona Road and 50 Road are very well used now, and we don't have the pedestrian access that's safe to cross these bridges to get to a major commercial development on the other side being Costco. So absolutely, these will be, you know, one of the major priorities that will be in place, including lighting and street signalization. So I know there's a number of other things, but these are certainly the 3 major that are on my radar. But I need a pot of money, and that's what Councillor Johnson and I moved back in 2018. We need a pot of money in order to do this, and this would be the way to address it. So I am supportive of this. I know the residents out there are concerned of the 9-story. It's just a suggestion, as Alyssa has said. We don't know what may come forward, but it's giving parameters to assist so that we don't have other applications for further intensification coming forward, and we have a good plan that somebody can that some development community can come into and be agreeable in moving forward. So, Mr. Chairman, I am supportive of this. It addresses a number of needs, and thank you for allowing me the indulgence to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. And Councillor Johnson, did you want to wrap up now or wait till we get to the report? It's up to you.
Actually, it's on the report, so I'll wait till later. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So any further discussion on the presentation from committee? Not seeing any. So the presentation was moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Johnson. So we need to receive. All in favor? Thank you. And then I need a mover and a seconder to receive the submissions. So moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Johnson. All in favor? Or opposed? Thank you. And excuse me. I need a mover and a seconder to close the public meeting. So moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Partridge. All in favor? Thank you. Sorry, just one moment here. So am I reading the highlighted part? Yeah, that's the best iteration we've come up with. So I need a mover and a seconder that the public submissions were received and considered by the committee in approving the application. So just to put that on the floor, so moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by, who'd like to second this? Councillor Collins, I see ya. Okay. So then on discussion on the report, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. First of all, I think that that preamble that you gave us to prove it sort of predetermines what the outcome will be. So that's kind of a really weird wording, in my opinion. So first of all, I'd like to go back to, General Manager Jason Thorne just PM'd me some wording. So I would just like to know if GM Jason Thorne would like to do this now, or can we do this at another time?
So through the chair, Jason Thorne, GM of Planning and ECDEV. So just to Councillor Johnson's earlier comment about the potential for provision of on-site affordable housing. The next steps for this property is that staff would be reporting back through the Affordable Housing Subcommittee on what the disposition strategy for the lands would be, because this parcel has been identified to be utilized for the purpose of affordable housing. So if it's the interest of Planning Committee to include in that report back whether there are opportunities to provide for some of that affordability on site through the disposition strategy, that is something that we could do. As Mr. Robichaud mentioned, that'd be outside of the zoning requirement, but it could certainly be a condition on the disposition. Council has done that before, for example, at Pier 8, at Jamesville, at other sites where the city has disposed of lands to provide included an on-site requirement for affordability. So if council committee want to provide that direction, we could include those considerations when we report back on what that disposition would look like.
Okay, thank you. And GM, through you, Mr. Chair, to GM Jason Thorne. Jason, would you prefer to do this as a separate outside this report, because this report doesn't deal with the selling of the land, so we need to do that separately?
Through the chair, yes, I think that would make sense to deal with the planning matter separately, and then if there's direction related to the disposition, that would be separate.
How about we get that ready for council and give people time to regurgitate that, to digest and regurgitate. So my comments, Mr. Chair, thanks for the indulgence. So I really have some concerns that the city is going ahead with rezoning this, only because what if the potential buyer wants it for commercial, and commercial would make the land even that much more valuable. I don't know what the market value would be if it went from low housing to medium housing. All we're doing is we're saving the potential buyers some money. And I don't know if that'll be reflective on the cost of the property. The other problem I have is the 120 meters. The letters that you got in today, I suspect came from a Facebook posting, which took it from the Spectator. It wasn't directly from the Spectator, but it was using the Spectator as part and parcel of spreading the word. Imagine if we had sent this out to more people. I think that there would have been a lot more comments, and I think the more informed a community is, the better it is. So I really have concerns about the 120 meters. It is COVID times. I have lots of applications that are coming in. We're doing Zoom meetings with the public, and it's been no issues. So this is the part I really have an issue with. So I'd like to be recorded as opposed at this time for the zoning of this particular piece of property. I think we could do much better. Alyssa, this is no reflection on what you've done because you strictly went to residential. I think there could have been a lot more potential in this, and I think that the market value to me would not make a difference. I think it's the property and the location of the property that's going to sell itself. It doesn't have to be rezoned, and I think we just saved our potential buyer a lot of money that the city could have used in the coffers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any further discussion on the report? Not seeing any. I do have a couple questions and comments on this. So just on the overall value of the land that we're anticipating, I mean, it just seems like a really good news story to me that we're taking a surplus land and we're going to be funding new affordable housing, new traffic and sidewalks in the area. So do we have a ballpark price of what we're anticipating this property to be worth? And I understand if you don't want to share that publicly, but just for my edification, do we have kind of like just a rough estimate of what we're expecting that this property might sell for?
Mr. Chairman, I actually don't have that information. Ray Kessler is in attendance. He may be able to provide a little bit more information on the proposed sale of the property, but I don't have that information as part of this planning review.
Ray, are you there? I saw you earlier.
So through the chair, and it's Ray Kessler, I'm the manager of real estate. We generally don't identify what we believe the properties are worth, but we will be marketing the site, and likely we will be putting a price tag north of $3 million on that site as part of our marketing materials.
Thank you. Follow-up question then. So did I hear right that the MTO rebuilt these overpasses and they refused to put in sidewalks? So now we're forced to have to use municipal funds in order to do that? Can I ask that question through to staff? Not sure who might be able to answer that. I see Councillor Pearson. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, this goes back, and I'm trying to remember, maybe Councillor Collins will timeline. So they were all 5 overpasses were done from Centennial East through Stony Creek a number of years ago. I raised the concern of the extension because we only have gravel on the bottoms as you come over the overpasses, but not all of them have enough sidewalk width or curbing width that makes it pedestrian safe. So yes, they were not interested. They were rebuilding like for like and repairs like for like, sorry. So that's what happened.
I absolutely love the MTO. They're my favorite provincial agency. And it's just ridiculous that you would rebuild a bridge and then not add on a sidewalk in an area like this and then force us to have to do it after the fact.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just clarify, they
Yeah.
didn't rebuild them completely. They just did repairs and refurbishment to existing concerns and the structures.
Yeah, but they were still mobilized on site. Anyway, that's kind of beside the point. It's my ongoing fun times with the MTO. So I heard some desire to have affordable housing on site. So that's something we're doing in Ward 8 at 60 Caledon with the disposition strategy. So I'd certainly support that. And from what I heard from staff in the presentation, really the rezoning there is to zone this as highest and best use so that the buyer can come in and pay maximum value, but also from a city perspective that we're maximizing our infill density potentials. And as we're moving through the Grids 2 process, I think we're going to come to understand how absolutely critical it is that every developable piece of property within the city for infill development is developed to its highest and best use. Otherwise, we're going to be hitting that wall of where we have developable land by 2050. I think it's the end of the Grids 2. But anyway, could I just ask to staff that, so we're rezoning it to what we have a vision for this site to be in terms of highest and best use, but if the ultimate purchaser decides that they would like to incorporate commercial or change it, they could still initiate a rezoning at that time, or are we locked into what we're saying it is here today?
Yep, through the chair. So just going back to a little bit back to what you had said earlier. So we not only rezoned it, to align with the medium density designation, but we also wanted to make sure that we had standards and requirements in that rezoning in order to mitigate impacts of a 9-story building. So we wanted to get that property ready from a perspective where staff ensured that any impacts from development would be contained within the site, other than allowing the developer to come in and have entirely different standards or proposals for what or where that building would be located if it was a 9-story. So we modified the zoning to make sure that we would get a good development or a good site plan. So that was one reason for the rezoning. There is the possibility that if a developer came in and they decided they wanted to add commercial, they could do that. It would be, they would have to request council to allow them to do that because there is that, is it 1 or 2 year moratorium on city initiated OPAs and ZBAs. So they would have to request a special exemption to be able to do that, but they could. The medium density designation of the Urban Hamilton official plan does permit local commercial on the ground floor. The only problem is, unfortunately, in the Urban Lakeshore secondary plan, it notwithstands that policy, but they'd have to amend the OP as well to allow some commercial if they want to do a ground floor commercial.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I had. So if there's no further discussion, we're going to go to the vote. So this was moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Collins. So all in favor on the report or opposed? Councillor Collins, were you able to vote? Thumbs up. And that is carried 7-1. And then a mover and a seconder to approve the report recommendations as amended. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Collins. All in favor? Thank you, and that is carried 7-1. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, we have items 8.3, delegations respecting the application for amendments to the Urban Hamilton Official Plan and Ancaster zoning bylaw 87-57 for lands located at 15 Church Street in Ward 12. I need a mover and a seconder to receive the written submissions on the agenda respecting item 10.1. Moved by Councillor Partridge, seconded by Councillor Pearson. We'll vote on receiving the written submissions. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. One virtual delegation. So that is Jim McLeod. So if you can just turn on your video.
The big question is, did it work?
I can hear you. I don't see you.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh.
And just before we start, you, as a delegation, you're not a statutory public meeting delegation, so you are, you do have a 5-minute time limit.
Yep, understood. I'll do my best.
Okay, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. I'm Jim McLeod. I'm Vice President of Ancaster Village Heritage Community, Inc. And since the decision on 15 Church was deferred, Councillor Ferguson's online community discussion, and thank you for organizing that, and an AVHC hosted online meeting got kind of the same result. Citizens are still opposed. At the AVHC meeting, the 33 participants agreed AVHC should speak for them on this matter. After the December 8th meeting, I got a clear copy of the secondary plan maps, and that's really why I'm here today, because I now understand quite more than was obvious before seeing those maps. I have two topics. First, the material provided by planning and the significant risk we see of an appeal to LPAT. The material provided by planning, which is the basis of your decision, seems to be based on erroneous assumptions. The staff report says the lands are designated mixed use medium density in UHOP. Now those are the traditional Main Street commercial areas, and that's the land next door, but it certainly does not describe 15 Church. I quote from the report, subject lands are within a community node, unquote. No, they're not. So the densification targets that justify this development do not apply. The report states, quote, the lands are located in the village core area, unquote. No again. The term transitional is used. No, there's no transition between community nodes and adjacent residential. The boundary is the boundary, and 15 Church Street is just an ER, single zone residence in an area of like homes. That's all. And to be satisfied with this, I'd refer you to the Wilson Street Secondary Plan Map B 2.8-1, Appendixes A and B. We see these as material errors because they drag the uses permitted on Wilson Street around the corner into the heritage residential areas, and it's contrary to the official plan. Stating the land was already in the node and the village core seems to show a lack of transparency for those of us that don't talk planning speak. If this application was clear that the node and the village core would extend around the corner into neighborhoods, you'd have a lot more than 56 submissions here, and they'd be from neighborhoods all along Wilson Street. This is a really bad precedent. And we've been here before. Ontario Municipal Board, April 3, 2008, provides good guidance. The applicant wanted to move a use permitted only on Wilson Street under the official plan around the corner to 15 Church and establish a dental clinic. At OMB, the city opposed the application. They said there are no transitional policies in the official plan. The uses that have character with the surrounding area. The proposal sets a precedent. The subject land is not in the village core. It doesn't front on Wilson. And the city noted the objective of the official plan is to protect the residential area. OMB, the predecessor to LPAT, found for the city and said it would be bad planning to allow encroachment on the stable residential areas. The more recent Wilson Street secondary plan excluded neighborhoods from the community node and the village core, so it's consistent with the official plan of 2008. 15 Church would be the first incursion of residential 3 and light commercial use into any established DR neighborhood. Yes, approval of this application green lights light commercial use, exactly what the city tried to prevent at the OMB. This leaves two issues for the committee. First, the documentation you base your decision on appears itself to be based on multiple erroneous assumptions about 15 Church. I don't know how you base a decision on that. If the report started with the correct assumptions, they would be the subject lands are in a neighborhood under UHOP, not in a community node, not in the village core, are in a residential 1 ER neighborhood in a historic enclave with Tisdale House, Hamel House, and the old town hall across the way. There are no commercial uses in any of these neighborhoods, and these facts would likely yield a remarkably different staff report. A valid concern about LPAT has been raised, given the city position in 2008 is the opposite of staff recommendations for 2021. The crystal clear position of the city in 2008 was no creeping around the corner, and the OMB said such a step should only be taken with clear policy direction. And please don't try and dismiss 2008 as history. In a town 200 plus years old, that's just a couple of heartbeats ago. Nothing factually has changed at 15 Church. Many of us were there in 2008. We don't understand why we're back to fight the same fight again. The OMB settled this. Why do we need to ask LPAT to do it again? So far, the discussion on this has been about how to build this. That's been the entire focus. How does this project get built? We suggest it needs to shift to be talked about what the land can be used for, because once it's been redesignated, it can be used for anything permitted, and residential 3 permits an awful lot that absolutely does not fit. Please listen to the citizens. They're right, again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLeod. Would you just mute your microphone? I'm getting some feedback from me. I'm not sure if it's me or how's that committee? Is that better? Yes. Thank you. So we have questions for the delegate, and then once we receive the delegate, we will open up our following item, which is discussion on the actual application. So are there any questions for Mr. McLeod from committee? Not seeing any. Okay, thank you. So I need a mover and seconder to receive the delegation, moved by Councillor Collins, seconded by, I'll second that myself. All in favor of the delegate? Thank you for the presentation, Mr. McLeod. That's carried. Thank you. So on to item 10.1, which is the discussion item for amendments to the Urban Hamilton Official Plan and Ancaster zoning bylaw 87-57 for lands located at 15 Church Street in Ancaster in Ward 12. So discussion on item 10.1. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, I think Mr. McLeod brought up some interesting points, and I just want to give staff who authored the report, whether it's James Van Roy or Steve Robichaud, an opportunity to respond to the comments that there's errors in the report. That my antenna went up with that. So can I look for a response from staff on the comments made by Mr. McLeod?
Certainly, I see James and both James and Steve would like to answer.
Good morning, Chair and everyone. Happy New Year. Again, my name is James Van Roy. I'm the planner for this file. I would just like to address some of those concerns regarding the designation of the lands. The lands, I'll start from a hierarchical approach. So in our official plan, we typically would identify these lands as a community node area. Those community node areas, we have the intent of establishing secondary plans for. So we do have the Ancaster Wilson Street secondary plan. Below the tier of the community node area, the community node, we also have that the lands are designated mixed use medium density. However, because we have a secondary plan for this area, we pay more specific attention to the Ancaster Wilson Street secondary plan. The lands are designated in the Ancaster Wilson Street secondary plan, which is identified in my report as low density residential 1. The lands are surrounded by a community node area. That's why the community node area policies are referenced in that report, is because we're speaking, they are still applicable, they are still relevant. So we felt necessary to discuss them.
Councillor, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm just going to make some other comments at this time, if you allow me to, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure where committee wants to go in this application, but what I picked up through this whole process, whether it was the December 8th public meeting, whether it was my meeting on in January or in December, I think it was the 20th or thereabouts, I just got to find them on my notes, is that intensification is not something that is troubling to a lot of my community, and it's troubling to me too. And putting these in committee needs to know there was originally an application for 7 townhouses there, not 6, and staff were not supportive, and neither was I because of the massing. And so they created this gap by putting up 2 buildings of 3. And I guess what I find concerning is going to be a bigger fight in the future is that there are 3 other either applications or other projects in the hopper, if you will. And each one of those have 5 to 6 floors. And that's going to really shove up intensification. This application is for 2.5 floors, which meets the requirements of the secondary plan. And at 2.5 floors, it's creating a lot of anxiety in my community. So I think we're going to have a big fight come up with when some of the other ones come up with 5 and 6 floors. I did hold a public meeting on December the 12th with about 28 in attendance. And I want to give a special shout out, a thank you to James Van Roy. He was very professional through the process, very calm and very knowledgeable, just like he was today in answering the questions around Jim's concerns and how the report may have been an error. While some of them were, of the people in that meeting were still not supportive, it certainly helped me in getting accurate information out to the public. And so I think all the information is there. I did communicate late last week with 29 others, happened to be the same number, who had emailed me after the December 8th meeting. Those invited to the WebEx meeting were everyone who wrote into council expressing concerns about the application. But I had 29 others reach out to me by email after that meeting. And so I communicated back to them, and I'm not going to go into what I said in that letter. It was a very comprehensive response. And all members of committee were copied on that email that I sent out to those 29 people. Now I blind carbon copied them to protect their privacy, but I did CC so that everyone could see who the members of this committee are. I continue to receive emails, even one is about 15 minutes ago. And interesting, there seems to be a little shift going on. There's a great number now that are coming in supportive of the application. And so if committee wants to move this forward, I want to put some amendments to it because there's some changes that I'd like to make after doing my public consultation. But I'll wait and see where committee wants to go on this before I place those amendments. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. So we'll finish discussion on the report and then I'll come back to you for your amendments. Is there any discussion from committee on item 10.1 on the report? Not seeing any. Just a couple quick comments from me, I guess. Yeah, I'm fully supportive of this development. I think 2,300 square foot luxury townhouses is hardly infill development. It's hardly, you know, compared to some of the infill in other parts of the city, I mean, it's pretty minimal. And as Councillor Ferguson noted, I think this probably should have been a 5 to 6 floor, much more medium density development rather than what's being proposed here. And again, I'll reiterate a point I raised earlier in the meeting is that when we look at our grids 2 process, we are going to have to hit 60% intensification or we're going to run out of developable land in the city of Hamilton in the planning horizon that we're faced with. And that means there's going to be intensification for every single part of the city of Hamilton. We all are going to bear some of that, some of the brunt of that. And it is very difficult. Change is always difficult. But like Councillor Ferguson said, this could have very well have been a 5 to 6 floor condo development, and it probably should have been. And you know, seeing what's proposed here is very much in what I see anyway, keeping in with you know, the desires of the community, and it really does fit in that spot. So I'm definitely supportive. With that, is there any other discussion from committee? And then I'll go back to Councillor Ferguson for his amendments. Not seeing any, so Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Well, I have no other comments to make, and so I'll let you just lead the meeting along, see where it goes.
You can put your amendments on the floor now.
Oh, because the motion hasn't been put up yet. Do I do the amendments now, or do it after the staff report has been moved? Then I amend it. I'm at your direction on this.
I've got you amending first, so let's put the report on the table first, and then then you can move your amendments. So would you like to move the staff report, Councillor?
No.
Councillor Pearson? Okay, so moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Johnson. And then you can put your amendments on the floor now, Councillor Pearson.
Okay, and before I do that, because I may go to a fourth, I don't know, is Mr. Sergi in the on the WebEx?
I saw him earlier.
Through the chair, it's Tony Sergi. I'm available.
Okay, thanks, Tony. So, Tony, you know, the three amendments I'll talk about as they stand alone later, but I'm also getting a lot of concern about the road and what happens if it's damaged during construction. It is a residential road, and you know, it looks like it's a surface treated road. And so what happens if there's damage done to that road during construction? How is will the road be repaired, and is there letters of credit that will require at site plan stage to ensure that the repairs are done? What's your thoughts on that?
Through the chair to the councillor. Yes, typically in this case here, I believe there's a requirement on page whatever 27 or 28 of the council report where they have to enter into an external works agreement because there's contemplation of extending the storm sewer along that road. So we can have additional conditions added that they do a pre-construction survey of the existing condition of the road to ensure there's no dispute and have it restored at that time and include the appropriate securities.
So there's no need for me to put an amendment to this then that the development engineering, which is identify you're the senior director of development engineering. You'll make sure that there's adequate securities to repair that road once it's either damaged by installation of utilities or heavy construction, concrete trucks coming in and cranes and so on. You'll make sure that we have adequate security to make sure that road is repaired properly, will you?
That is typically what we'll do, but for added security, if you wish to put it very clear and upfront, then it will be part of the site plan review that it's there to ensure that all staff are aware of the requirements. Because this could go, if there's no storm sewer extension, it could be done by permit. Regardless, they have to do some sidewalk work, so we might as well make it all encompassing and include that additional for clarification purpose, Councillor.
Okay, so I'm going to take, Mr. Chair, I'm going to take the senior director's advice on this. And so I'm just going to do you want me to do each amendment individually or put all four up together? I think I could do all four, can I not?
Yeah, let's do them all together.
And so as an amendment, then I'll let clerks figure out where they plug it into the recommendation, and is that the basements be installed under the units which have no impact on the overall height to avoid the garage being used as a storage area. Number 2 is that the ward councillor review the site plan before it is approved with special consideration on heritage features, height, and lot coverage. Third, that the maximum lot coverage be guaranteed at 37%. And number 4, that we add a requirement to have a precondition assessment to avoid any disputes over damages on the road itself on Church Street. So those are my 4 amendments. Okay. If I can get a seconder for that.
I see Councillor Farr had his hand up first. Is there any discussion on the amendments that are on the table?
I think they should be clear to the public because the 3 recommendations at least were in my correspondence back to all the people that had emailed me. And I think it's pretty clear. We talked about basements before. This is such a special project. I want an opportunity. I know site plans for the public's purpose are delegated to staff, but a lot of things are discussed at that point and a lot of the details are worked through. And I'm going to ask for an opportunity to do that with our planning staff. And there was some confusion about the lot coverage. I just want to lock that down at 37%. And a number of people were concerned about damage to the road. And just one more question to Tony, if I can. Tony, if someone's going to close that road, one of the contractors to bring a crane in or for other reasons, they have to get a permit to do that, do they not? And secondly, if they do get a permit, all first responders are notified. So ambulances would know about it, fire trucks would know about it, etc. Correct?
Through the chair to the councillor, that is correct. The permit is required for any road occupancy typically.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, I think my 4 amendments are pretty clear and it's been moved and seconded.
Thank you, and those are before you. And I saw Councillor Wilson discussion on the amendments.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking for clarity from the mover of the amendment on the second one, or B, if you will, and I think it was a reference to a role in the site plan. Could I just see clarification on that, please?
Yeah, sometimes councillors and staff can confirm this, has to be in attendance at the site plan review. I don't want to be there for the whole thing. I want a chance to look at it before it is approved with special focus on those 3 areas I mentioned.
Thank you for the answer. No, I appreciate that. I know there's a lot of important details that are discussed there, and it's not part of the public consultation practice. But just for my edification moving forward, that is that's a staff authority, and so you would just be there, councillor, to review and comment if I could get that.
Well, typically, I've done this a few times before, as have other members of council, and have an opportunity to make sure that it meets my expectations and learn what's the public can expect when this is built, and then use that knowledge. I do a column once a month in Ancaster News, and I would be able to convey it out to the public, what heritage features are being used, confirm the 37% lot coverage, and also the basements will be installed, and that the taxpayers will be protected on the road.
Thank you very much. My second question on the basement, any feedback from the developer on what will that generate a significant additional cost for a potential user?
He publicly agreed to it at the public meeting. I'm just locking it down now. He agreed to do it if we wanted him to.
Yep, thank you. I'm just sensitive as obviously these were not be classified as affordable housing, but sensitive to we're trying to be sensitive to people getting in the market. Thank you for your responses.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendments? I'm not seeing any, so we'll go to a vote on that. So that was moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Farr. All in favor of the 4 for you, please indicate. Thank you. That carries unanimously. And then I'm going to go back to the old wording here. So this is moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Johnson. And regarding the staff report to approve the application with amendment that the public submissions received on this matter did not affect the decision. We'll go to a vote. All in favor? Sorry, Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, one last question to the clerk. Um, Clerk Kelsey, the amendments that were just approved will appear under the recommendations under category C and be Roman numerals A, B, C, and D. Is that correct?
I believe so. I'd have to just look at where the numbering is, but I.
Well, there's an A part and a B part in the recommendation, and I just added the C part with 4 parts to it, in A, B, C, and D.
Sure. So I had actually been given like I guess a draft amending motion for your item, which is a little different than what you have said to me, but it will be incorporated. And we will make sure the
Your
bylaws
drafts
are
were very
revised.
similar. Your draft was very similar in content to mine.
It was a little different, but we will make sure that the recommendations are appropriately amended and that the bylaw is amended as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pearson.
Mr. Chairman, just in that verbiage that the report and the submissions, etc., you just mentioned, and the report as amended, if I'm not mistaken, you should add that because of the amendments Councillor Ferguson put on, and I'll move all of that.
There's a separate vote for the recommendations as amended.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thank you. So we'll vote on the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Sorry, just hold on a second. Yes. Yeah, okay. Sorry, we're just confirming what we're voting on here. Thank you. That passes unanimously. And then finally, I need to move to approve the report recommendations as amended. So moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Johnson. I'd like to finalize this as well. Thank you. All in favor? Or opposed? Thank you. That carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is 10.2, expanding the administrative penalty system bylaw 17-225 to include the snow removal bylaw 03-296. I need a mover and a seconder to put the recommendations in the report on the floor. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Partridge. Thank you. Is there any discussion on 10.2? Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm not sure who's here that can answer the questions. Would it be Ken Leenders? I'm assuming. Hi, Ken. Good morning. Thank you. I'm looking on all the windows here. So yeah, I appreciate and certainly whatever we can do to simplify. But Ken, just reaffirm that we still have the process where bylaw goes out. The issue. So they're going to issue the order. But is there a reinvestigation within so many hours? And if it's not done, that's when we do the penalty as far as the APS system. Just to explain the process, how this is going to happen, please.
And through the chair, it's Ken Leenders, Director of Licensing and Bylaw Services. That is correct. Basically, we wait for the last snowfall. Once all the roads are clear, then we go out, we inspect properties, respond to complaints. We also do some proactive work, as you know. And then we issue an order, and we give them an order of 24 hours to clear the sidewalk. And then we go back and re-inspect. And if in fact they have not cleared the sidewalks, there is a fee that is added to the property, a fee for service. As well, we contact the contractors. And when we would move to a charge, it would be someone that is a repeat offender. So if in fact we've given them notice before, we see it happen the next snowstorm, we could actually go there again. We've already issued them an order because the order is stays in effect for 12 months. Then we could actually proceed with a charge. Very rarely do we lay a charge on this, but there are some repeat offenders that just don't get the message and just say, put it on my property tax, I don't care. So I think it's important that we have this enforcement tool to make sure that people are compliant with the bylaw.
Excellent. I can't disagree, and I appreciate the clarification. So on the day-to-day operation after a snowfall, we shouldn't see any major difference other than, as you say, repeat offenders that we seem to have problems with. So I appreciate that clarification. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Councillor Partridge.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And Ken, just on the report, it does mention penalties for clearing of ice and from sidewalks and roofs. But when I look at the complaints, it doesn't appear that we've ever received a complaint about the roof. And I'm just wondering if you could expand on that a bit, just so people understand.
And through you, Mr. Chair, an excellent question, Councillor. We may have situations where there is a significant amount of snow hanging over a roof that could endanger people using the sidewalk. And so there is no snow on a sidewalk, but the potential there to injure someone or create a hazard. And so we can actually take that order from the ice and snow bylaw and make people remove the snow off the roof. We see this in particular for large icicles, and that becomes an issue where we have to enforce that, and it's a health and safety issue.
And thank you for that explanation. And would that mostly be, in referring to the ice and the icicles from roofs, would that mostly be from businesses where they're right up close to the sidewalk, or with the parking lot beside? Have we ever had complaints?
Through the chair, yes, we have had complaints, but you are correct. It is mostly from businesses that are right up into the sidewalks, which creates the hazard. But generally, most of our enforcement, give me an example of the last year, we had over 3,000 calls. We issued over 1,800 orders for people to clear the sidewalks. But traditionally, they're homeowners that have just negated their responsibility to ensure the sidewalk is clear. And so we give them an order and we make sure that they move forward with it. And then if in fact they don't, we actually send in the contractors, and that does happen so that we make sure it is clear.
Yeah, and I appreciate that more fulsome explanation. I don't want our residents to think that they have to climb up on their roofs and clear off the snow and the ice, as well as clear their sidewalks. But I'm really pleased to see that we have a little bit of a stronger bylaw going into place here. So thank you, Chair. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion or comments? Not seeing any. Just one quick question from me, Director Lyrics. We talked earlier offline about the efficiencies in the APS system and how it's a much simpler process to process fines rather than through the courts. And we're expecting some efficiencies within the department, which in turn can lead us to perhaps better and more effective pursuit of bylaw infractions for snow clearing. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to talk to that a little, speak to that a little.
And an excellent point, Mr. Chair. The administrative penalty system is much more efficient. It's much more quicker for citizens if they want to dispute the charge. And they can do that very quickly through one of our screening officers, and they can find resolution much quicker. In the old system where we go to a PON or provincial offense notice, that actually has to go to court. We have to wait for a court date. A crown sheet must be prepared, and then of course it gets scheduled into a regular court appearance. Not that user friendly for the citizens of Hamilton, and certainly does tax the amount of work that our team does, taking them away from important work of getting out there and ensuring that infractions aren't happening. So we're really happy with the apps program. We're finding it much more efficient and much more user-friendly for the citizens of Hamilton, but it also creates a lot of efficiencies for our office as well.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, I know the last parking ticket, City Hamilton parking ticket I got through the administrative penalty system, you get a copy of the ticket plus photos of your vehicle. showing where it was parked. So there's really no dispute because you get all that information. You can see it. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, I was parked illegally, so I paid a ticket. And there's really no dispute. So in this case, we'd be following the same process where the bylaw officer collect the evidence, have the photos available, and that'll be available to residents as part of the system, correct?
You are correct, Mr. Chair. We're trying to be as transparent as possible and certainly try to find resolutions. So all that documentary evidence as well as photographs are in the file that that a person can actually examine and to help them reach the appropriate conclusion.
Great, thank you so much. So with that, did I have a yes, it's Pearson and Partridge, correct? Yeah. Okay, so all in favor then on 10.2. Thank you, carries unanimous. On to motions. Item 11.1, the Erase Programs Amendment. Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I do wish to put the motion today. And if I could, this is essentially a motion asking staff to come back with a report that seeks to address situations where we may be providing grant monies through the Erase program for projects that staff and or council do not support. So I understand right now the process is if someone wants to take advantage of the grant process program, they have the ability to apply, receive the funds as long as they qualify, and then proceed with the work. We may run into instances, as you know, where there might be an application put later or concurrently with that committee and or council do not support, or even staff. So this is seeking for staff to asking staff to come back with a report that seeks to address those situations, which are few and far between, but do happen. I understand we've been through one of those already. And so there, I'm sure what I'm looking for is there should be a policy related to the same. So this is essentially asking for an information report to come back, and the wording has been prepared by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And your seconder, Councillor Farr. Okay. So all in favor on the motion before you. Thank you. That carries unanimously. Item 13, if there's any notices of motion, is the general information and other business. And I believe the Planning Committee's staff solicitor, Patrick McDonald would like to introduce a new member of our legal services staff. Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is obviously a bit awkward. Normally we do these introductions in person when we hire a new planning lawyer. But for those of you who haven't already been apprised, Aisling Flaherty who's on the call now, has joined the law department as of January 4th, and will be working alongside me and doing planning and development and related work in the city. So a bit of background, Aisling has previously worked in private practice, in the municipal law group at a major Toronto firm since 2014 when she was called to the bar. She received her law degree from the University of Windsor and her undergraduate in political studies from Queen's University. During her time as a lawyer, she's worked for a number of municipalities and landowners across the province with respect to land use planning matters, including expropriation proceedings, and has substantial experience with LPAT. So I suspect once she's fully up to speed, she'll be appearing in rotation with me before Planning Committee to answer your questions, as well as dealing with a number of LPAT matters that I'm sure she'll be in touch with individual councillors on as they arise. So if Aisling wants to say hello, I'll turn that over to her, but just wanted to welcome her to the team and introduce her formally to Planning Committee.
Thank you, Patrick. And Aisling, you have the floor.
Through the chair, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the nice welcome and intro, Patrick, and I look forward to working with all of you going forward.
Thank you. Welcome to the city Hamilton. It's you're going to be busy. Thanks so much.
It's good to see someone from Queens on the docket. Woohoo, political studies. Woohoo. Go Gales.
Okay, enough of that. Where's the gavel? So we have a housekeeping issue to take care of. So this is on the appointment of our chair and vice chair. So the procedural bylaw states that committee member cannot hold the same position for more than once in a council term. And so Councillor Farr was first vice chair in 2019, and Councillor Johnson was second vice chair in 2020. So we need to revise our chair position. So there is a simple solution to this. We can swap them. So Councillor Farr would become second vice chair and Councillor Johnson would become first vice chair, or we can open up the process to nominations. So I see Councillor Johnson, you're being voluntold that you're now first vice chair. That's how it works at planning committee. That's
I'll second that.
Second by Councillor Partridge. Councillor Johnson moves it. Seconded by Councillor Partridge. So we're just swapping the positions of chairs. Yep. Okay. So all in favor, we need a vote on that. Passes unanimously. Thank you. And 13.2 is our general manager's update. General Manager Thorne, did you have any updates for committee?
Nothing for me today, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. And there's nothing to vote on there. And then moving on to private and confidential, we have our closed session minutes from December 8th. So I need a mover and seconder to approve the closed session minutes. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Collins. All in favor? Thank you. That is passed unanimously. And then we do have a closed session item. So I need a mover and a seconder to move into closed session. So Councillor Partridge, seconded by Councillor Wilson. To move into closed session pursuant to section 8.1 subsections E and F of the city's procedural bylaw 18-270 as amended, and section 239.2 subsections E and F of the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended, as the subject matter pertains to litigation or potential litigation, includes matters before administrative tribunals affecting the city and the receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. So vote to move into closed session. We got everybody? There we go. Carried unanimously. Members of the public, the meeting will continue following the closed session portion of the meeting. When you see members of committee rejoin the meeting, the committee will wait up to 5 minutes upon reconvening in open session before proceeding with the meeting to provide members of the public and the media time to return. So we will now move into closed session. We're good? Okay. So committee members, we are back in open session and we're going to restart the meeting. So we are on item 14.2, which is update and instructions regarding local planning appeal tribunal appeals of 600 James Street North in Ward 2. And I need a mover and a seconder to approve that report LS 21003 and its appendices remain confidential. Moved by Councillor Farr and seconded by, who wants to second this? Councillor Wilson. All in favor, please indicate. Or opposed. Got to move back into open. Follow your own direction, Chair. Thank you. That carries unanimously. And finally, mover and seconder to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Partridge. All in favor? And it's not even 4 o'clock. It's amazing.
Good job, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Well done, Chair.
Thank you. All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.